I never expected to see my ex-husband standing at the foot of my hospital bed. Not after the divorce. Not after everything his family had said about me. And definitely not while I was in labor. The contraction hit so hard I grabbed the bed rail and nearly cried out. "Emily, breathe." My best friend Sarah squeezed my hand. I tried. I really did. But breathing felt optional at that point. The room blurred around me. Nurses moved between machines. Monitors beeped steadily. The clock on the wall read 2:41 a.m. Then the door opened. I looked up. For a second, I thought the pain medication was making me hallucinate. Nathan, my ex-husband. The man I hadn't spoken to in 8 months. The man who had signed divorce papers after his mother spent years convincing him I could never give him a child. He stopped dead in the doorway. The color drained from his face. Nobody spoke. The room went silent. One of the nurses looked confused. "Dr. Walker?" Nathan didn't answer. His eyes were locked on me, then on my stomach, then back on me. Sarah folded her arms. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me." That seemed to break the spell. Nathan swallowed. "What happened?" The nurse handed him a chart. "Emergency staffing shortage." Dr. Collins called out. "You're covering." His eyes dropped to the paperwork, then widened. 38 weeks. The math hit him instantly. I saw it happen. His jaw tightened. Another contractions slammed through me before he could say anything. I groaned. Professional instinct finally took over. Nathan stepped forward. "What are her vitals?" The nurse answered. He studied the monitor. For the next 20 minutes, he wasn't my ex-husband. He was my doctor, calm, focused, efficient, the same man I'd once trusted with my entire future. Funny how life works. Sometimes the people who break your heart are the same people who save you. Hours blurred together. Pain, sweat, fear. Then finally, dawn began creeping through the hospital windows. A nurse checked me again. "It's time." The room suddenly exploded into activity. Instructions, machines, movement. Everything happening at once. One final push. Then a cry. Sharp, strong, beautiful. The most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. My baby was here. I burst into tears immediately. Real tears. The ugly kind. Sarah was crying too. Even one of the nurses wiped her eyes. Nathan lifted the baby carefully. For a moment he simply stared. Then everything changed. The baby opened his eyes. Nathan froze, completely froze. The room seemed to stop moving. I watched his face, watched the realization hit him. My son had the exact same eyes Nathan did. The same unusual gray-blue color. The same tiny dimple, the same expression. Nathan went silent. Not a single word. His hands trembled slightly. He walked toward me slowly, like he was carrying something fragile. Maybe he was. He placed the baby into my arms. I held him against my chest. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Nathan finally whispered, "Emily." I closed my eyes. Because I already knew what was coming. Sarah moved closer. Protective as always. Nathan swallowed, hard. Then asked the question that had been sitting in the room since the moment he arrived. "Is he mine?" Silence. My son slept peacefully against me, completely unaware that his entire future had just changed. I looked down at his tiny face, then back at Nathan, the man who should have been there during every appointment, every ultrasound, every sleepless night. Instead, he'd chosen doubt, chosen silence, chosen his mother's version of the truth. "My son deserves better than this conversation right now," I said quietly. Nathan looked like I'd hit him. Maybe I had. Because guilt has a way of finding people eventually. He stared at the baby again, then slowly nodded. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, Nathan's mother arrived. Margaret Walker. Perfect hair, perfect smile, perfect ability to make other people miserable. She walked into my hospital room carrying flowers. The performance started immediately. Oh my. Her eyes landed on the baby. Then widened, because even she couldn't ignore the resemblance. Sarah almost laughed. Margaret recovered quickly. Babies can look like anyone. Nobody responded. Not even Nathan. That seemed to bother her. She looked at her son. Nathan, surely you're not making assumptions. Still nothing. For the first time in my life, I saw uncertainty on her face. 'Cause Nathan wasn't defending her. He wasn't agreeing with her. He wasn't saying anything at all. 3 weeks later, the DNA test confirmed what everyone already knew. Nathan was the father, 100%, no surprises, no dramatic reveal. Just facts, cold, simple, undeniable. The bigger surprise came afterward. Nathan showed up at my house one evening carrying a folder. I almost didn't open the door. Almost. He stood there looking exhausted. Older somehow. Like regret had aged him. What is this? He handed me the folder, medical records. His medical records. I frowned. Then started reading. Halfway through the first page, my stomach dropped. Nathan had undergone fertility testing before our divorce, months before. There had been concerns. Not with me. With him. Follow-up testing had been recommended. He never told me. Never corrected his mother. Never defended me. For years, I'd carried blame that never belonged to me. I looked up slowly. Nathan couldn't meet my eyes. I was ashamed. The words came out barely above a whisper. I laughed once. Not because it was funny. Because sometimes pain reaches a point where laughter is easier than crying. You let me believe it was my fault. He nodded. Tears filled his eyes. I know. The silence stretched. Then he said something I never expected. My mother was wrong. I waited. And I was worse. That one landed. Because it was true. Margaret had spread the poison. Nathan had allowed it. And silence can hurt just as much as words. Months passed. Nathan stayed involved. Doctor appointments. Diapers. Late-night emergencies. The work. The real work. Not because he wanted another chance. Because he wanted to be a father. One evening, he watched our son sleeping in his crib, then quietly asked the question I knew was coming. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? I looked at my son. Then back at Nathan. I already have. Hope appeared in his eyes. Then I shook my head. Forgiveness isn't the same thing as trust. The hope faded, but he nodded. Because he understood. Finally. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes nobody screams. Nobody loses everything. Nobody gets humiliated. Sometimes the truth simply walks into the room and refuses to leave. And that's exactly what happened. The moment my baby opened his eyes. Because in a single second, every lie fell apart. And for the first time in years, I stopped carrying a burden that was never mine to begin with. I never expected my ex-husband to be the doctors standing at the end of my hospital bed. Not after the divorce. Not after everything his mother had done. And certainly not while I was bringing a baby into the world. The contraction hit hard enough to steal my breath. I grabbed the rail beside me and squeezed. Olivia, breathe. My best friend Megan brushed damp hair away from my face. I nodded, tried to focus, tried to ignore the pain. Outside the delivery room window, the sun hadn't risen yet. The hospital corridors were quiet. The clock read 4:12 a.m., then the door opened. I looked up, and my entire world stopped. Daniel, my ex-husband, the man who had signed divorce papers 8 months earlier, the man who had walked away after his mother convinced him that I could never give him a family. He froze in the doorway. The color drained from his face. The nurse behind him looked confused. Dr. Brooks! Daniel didn't answer. His eyes were locked on me, then on my stomach, then back on me. The sail scent stretched. Finally, Megan broke it. You've got to be kidding me. That seemed to snap him back to reality. Another contraction hit. I cried out. Immediately, his professional instincts took over. He stepped forward. What are her vitals? The nurse handed him the chart. He scanned it quickly, his jaw tightened. 38 weeks. I watched him do the math. His eyes lifted slowly. He knew exactly what that meant. But this wasn't the time. The baby's heart rate suddenly dipped on the monitor. Everything changed. The personal history disappeared. For the next hour, Daniel wasn't my ex-husband. He was my doctor. Focused, calm, efficient. The same man I had once trusted with my future. Funny how life works. Sometimes the people who hurt you most are still capable of helping you. The labor became harder. Pain blurred everything. Hours seemed to stretch forever. Megan never left my side. She held my hand, fed me ice chips, threatened anyone who annoyed me. At one point, she leaned close and whispered, "If you die, I'm suing everybody." I laughed despite the pain. Then another contraction reminded me life wasn't interested in jokes. Finally, a nurse smiled. "It's time." The room exploded into activity. Instructions, Shashin's movement, then one final push. A cry filled the room, strong, healthy, perfect. My baby was here. Tears instantly flooded my eyes. Nothing prepares you for that moment. Nothing. The world simply changes. Daniel carefully lifted the baby. For a moment he just stared. Then his entire expression shifted. The baby opened his eyes, gray-blue, exactly like Daniel's. Not similar. Not close. Exactly. The room went silent. Daniel froze. His hands trembled slightly. I noticed, so did Skin. Nobody said anything. Nobody needed to. The truth was standing right there, wrapped in a hospital blanket. Daniels slowly carried the baby over to me. I held him against my chest. He settled immediately, like he already knew where he belonged. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Daniel finally whispered, "Olivia." I already knew what was coming. His eyes never looked up at C's face. Then he asked it, the question that had been waiting in the room since he walked through the door. "Is he mine?" The silence felt enormous. I looked down at my son. Tiny fingers, tiny nose, tiny heartbeat, the greatest thing that had ever happened to me. Then I looked back at Daniel, the man who should have been beside me through every appointment, every ultrasound, every sleepless night. Instead, he had chosen doubt, chosen silence, chosen his mother's version of events. This isn't the conversation I'm having right now. My voice remained calm, but it hurt. His face fell. For the first time, I saw genuine regret. Not embarrassment, not shock, regret. The next morning, he came back, alone, no doctor coat, no clipboard, just Daniel. He looked exhausted, older, like he hadn't slept. He sat quietly beside the bed. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Then he looked at our son again. "I need to know." I understood. I really did. But understanding doesn't erase pain. "You believed her." His eyes dropped. "My mother?" I laughed softly. "Who else?" The memory still hurt. Years of fertility treatments, years of tests, years of questions. Every month ending in disappointment. And every single time, his mother found a way to remind me that I was failing. At least according to her. Some women just aren't meant to be mothers. I could still hear her voice, still remember every word. The worst part wasn't her. It was Daniel saying nothing. Always nothing. He would apologize later, privately, but never when it mattered. Never when I was standing there alone. Eventually, that silence became louder than her insults, and that's what destroyed our marriage. Not hatred. Not fighting. Silence. 3 days later, the DNA test was ordered. Not because I doubted. Not because he doubted. Because trust had been broken long before the baby arrived. The results came back 2 weeks later. Positive. 100%. Daniel was the father. No surprise, no mystery, just truth. The real shock came afterward. His attorney sent over medical records. Records I had never seen before. Records from nearly a year before our divorce. I sat at my kitchen table reading them, then read them again and again. My hands started shaking. Daniel had undergone fertility testing before our marriage ended, before his mother started blaming me publicly, before everything fell apart. The report showed concerns regarding his fertility, not mine, his. I stared at the pages, unable to breathe. For years I had carried shame that never belonged to me. For years I had questioned myself, wondered if my body had failed, wondered if I wasn't enough. And all along, he knew there could be another explanation. Yet he stayed silent. When Daniel arrived that evening, I handed him the papers. He couldn't meet my eyes. I was ashamed. Those 3 words changed everything. Not because they fixed anything, because they finally explained everything. His mother had given him an easier story, a story where none of it was his fault, and he had accepted it. I sat quietly, then asked the only question that mattered. Why didn't you tell me? Tears filled his eyes, because he didn't have a good answer. There wasn't one. The months that followed were strange. Daniel showed up consistently. Doctor appointments, diaper changes, late-night phone calls. The work, the real work. His mother wasn't welcome. That boundary stayed firm. For once, nobody argued. Even Daniel understood. One evening, he watched our son sleeping peacefully in his crib. Then he looked at me. Do you think we'll ever get another chance? The question hung in the air. A year earlier, I would have said yes without hesitation. Now the answer felt different. I smiled sadly. I forgive you. Hope flickered in his eyes. Then I continued. But forgiveness isn't the same thing as trust. The hope faded. Slowly. He nodded, because deep down he already knew. Some things can be repaired, others leave scars. Today, our son is thriving. Daniel is a good father, a consistent one, and that's what matters most. People think revenge is loud. They imagine screaming, arguments, humiliation, but the truth is much quieter. The truth that changed my life arrived, wrapped in a hospital blanket. The moment my son opened his eyes, every lie collapsed. Every accusation lost its power. Every doubt disappeared. And for the first time in years, I stopped carrying a burden that had never belonged to me. The room was completely silent when the DNA results arrived. Not the comfortable kind of silence. The kind that feels heavy. The kind that makes your chest hurt. I sat across from my ex-husband in a small conference room side in a family law office in Lexington, Kentucky. Between us sat 2 attorneys. A sealed envelope rested on the table. Nobody touched it. Nobody spoke. For almost a full minute. Then my attorney slid the envelope forward. Whenever you're ready. I looked at Ethan, my ex-husband, the man I had loved for nearly 7 years. Zbezu durst me, because his mother convinced him I had betrayed him. The man who had spent the last 6 months demanding a DNA test for my daughter. His jaw tightened. Open it. My attorney carefully removed the papers. Her eyes moved across the first page. Then the second. Then she stopped. Something changed in her expression. I noticed immediately. So did Ethan. What is it? He asked. Nobody answered right away. The silence stretched. Finally, she looked up. The child is your daughter. The room went still. Completely still. I wasn't surprised. Neither was my attorney. The only person who looked shocked was Ethan. His face drained of color. For a moment, he simply stared at the paperwork. Then he looked at me. Then back at the results. As if reading them again would somehow change reality. It says 99.999% probability of paternity. Nobody spoke, because there was nothing left to say. The truth had arrived, and it was devastating. 6 months earlier, I had given birth to my daughter, Lily. Alone, well, not completely alone. My sister Jenna had been there, but Ethan wasn't. By then, our divorce had already been finalized. A divorce built on lies. At least I knew that now. Back then, I didn't. Back then, I thought grief was the worst thing I would ever experience. I was wrong. Betrayal hurts differently, especially when it comes from someone you trusted. The trouble started almost 2 years before Lily was born. Ethan's mother, Patricia, had never liked me. She was polite in public, sweet around church friends, charming around neighbors. But behind closed doors, she was different. Every conversation felt like a test. Every compliment came with a hidden insult. Every family dinner became an interrogation. The worst part? Ethan never noticed. Or maybe he did. Maybe he simply chose not to. When Ethan and I struggled to conceive, Patricia suddenly became very interested in our marriage. She asked questions constantly. Doctor appointments, test results, fertility treatments, things that weren't her business. Then came the comments. Small at first. You seem stressed. Stress affects women. Maybe your career is the issue. Always subtle. Always careful. Until she stopped being subtle. One afternoon, she looked me directly in the eye and said something I'll never forget. A man deserves a family. I understood exactly what she meant. Unfortunately, so did Ethan. And he said nothing. Months passed. The tension grew. Then everything exploded. One evening, Ethan came home looking different. Cold, distant. Like a stranger wearing my husband's face. He sat across from me at our kitchen table. Then asked a question that shattered my world. Have you been seeing someone else? I honestly thought he was joking. I laughed. He didn't. That's when I realized he believed it. Actually believed it. The accusations had felt unreal. Where would that even come from? The answer arrived quickly. Patricia. Of course. According to her, she had seen me meeting another man. According to her, several people had noticed. According to her, there were rumors. Rumors. The favorite weapon of people who don't have evidence. I denied everything. Because it wasn't true. But once doubt enters a relationship, logic becomes difficult. Trust starts leaking out. One crack at a time. 3 months later, Ethan filed for divorce. I signed the papers while crying so hard I could barely read them. The marriage ended, just like that. Or so I thought. Then, 4 weeks after the divorce became final, I discovered I was pregnant. I sat in my bathroom staring at the positive test. Completely stunned. I laughed, then cried, then laughed again. Because life has a twisted sense of timing. I considered telling Ethan immediately. I really did. But every time I picked up my phone, I remembered something. He didn't believe me. Not when it mattered. Not when our marriage depended on it. So I stayed silent. For a while. Then Patricia found out. I still don't know how. But somehow she always seemed to know everything. Suddenly Ethan started demanding answers. Demanding proof. Demanding tests. The same man who once promised to trust me forever. I agreed to the DNA test immediately. Not because I owed him anything. Because I was tired. Tired of defending myself. Tired of carrying accusations that weren't mine. And now we were here. The truth sitting on a table between us. Undeniable. Ethan stared at the paperwork for a long time. Then something unexpected happened. He looked toward the door. Patricia was standing outside the conference room window, waiting, watching. She had insisted on coming. Of course she had. Ethan stood slowly. His face looked pale, almost gray. Then he walked to the door, opened it, and looked directly at her. The room remained silent. What did you do? Patricia blinked. What? What did you do? His voice cracked. For the first time in years, I saw fear on her face. Real fear. Not embarrassment. Not annoyance. Fear. Ethan? No. His voice grew stronger. You told me she cheated. Patricia's expression shifted. I was trying to protect you. From what? No answer. Because there wasn't one. He stared at her, then asked the question that changed everything. Did you ever actually see anything? The silence that followed told us everything. Patricia looked away. That was enough. Ethan understood, so did I. The rumors, the accusations, the divorce. All of it had started with assumptions, and she had allowed those assumptions to become facts, because they supported the story she wanted. Finally, Ethan whispered the words that seemed to physically hurt him. You lied to me. The room froze. Patricia opened her mouth, closed it, then looked away again. Because sometimes silence is the loudest confession. Ethan sat back down across from me. Older somehow. Broken. The truth does that. It ages people, especially when they realize they helped destroy something valuable. Several minutes passed before he spoke again. I'm sorry. Simple words. Sincere words. Years too late. I believed he meant them. That didn't mean they fixed anything. Because some wounds don't disappear when the truth arrives. They simply stop bleeding. A few weeks later, Ethan met Lily for the first time. She wrapped her tiny hand around his finger, and he cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. The way people cry when they're mourning something they can never get back. Today, he's a good father, a consistent father. But we're not together, and we never will be. Because forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. I learned that lesson the hard way. The real victory wasn't proving I had told the truth. It wasn't watching Patricia lose control of her story. It wasn't seeing Ethan finally understand. The real victory was refusing to let somebody else's lie become my daughter's future. And sometimes, that's the strongest revenge of all. Living peacefully after the people who hurt you finally have to face the truth. I never planned to see my ex-husband again. At least not like that. Not with a baby in my arms, not after everything his mother had said. And definitely not after the divorce she helped destroy. It happened on a rainy Saturday afternoon in Asheville, North Carolina. I was standing outside a small coffee shop, trying to balance a diaper bag, an umbrella, and my 8-month-old son. Life had become a constant juggling act, and honestly, I loved it. My son Noah giggled as raindrops tapped against the stroller cover. I smiled. Then I heard a familiar voice. Rachel? My entire body froze. I turned slowly, and there he was. Adam, my ex-husband. The man I had once imagined growing old with. The man who chose his mother's opinions over our marriage. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then his eyes dropped to the baby. Everything changed. The color drained from his face. Noah looked up and smiled. The same smile Adam wore every time he laughed. The same dimple, the same eyes. The same everything. Adam stared. I watched realization hit him like a truck. His lips parted slightly. But no words came out, just silence. Heavy silence. The kind that says more than conversation ever could. 3 years earlier, I had been married. Happy. At least I thought I was. Adam and I met through mutual friends. He was kind, funny, reliable. The kind of man who remembered small details. The kind who made you feel safe. We got married after 18 months, bought a small house, started building a life. Then came the questions. The questions everyone eventually asks married couples. When are you having kids? At first, we laughed them off. Then months passed, then years. And the questions stopped being funny. That's when his mother became interested. Linda Parker. A woman who could turn cruelty into concern so smoothly, people actually thanked her for it. At first, she offered advice, vitamins, special diets. Doctors, then came the comments, small ones, sharp ones, always disguised as kindness. You work too much. Stress affects fertility. Some women wait too long. I ignored them, or tried to, but over time they became impossible to avoid. Every family gathering felt like an investigation. Every holiday became another reminder of what I supposedly couldn't provide. One Sunday after church, Linda looked directly at me and smiled. Some women are meant to be mothers. Others are meant for different things. The table went quiet. Everyone understood exactly what she meant. Especially me. I looked at Adam, waiting for him to say something. Anything. He didn't. That hurt more than her words. Because enemies don't break your heart. The people you love do. Months later, fertility testing finally happened. Mine came back normal. Completely normal. I remember sitting in my car afterward feeling relieved, hopeful, excited. I called Adam immediately. Everything looks good. That's wonderful, he said. You should schedule yours a pause. Then another excuse. There were always excuses, work, schedules, timing. Something. Anything. Just never the appointment. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I wish I had. The marriage slate changed after that. Not dramatically, quietly. Distance appeared. Conversations became shorter. Silences became longer. Then Linda became bolder. One afternoon, she cornered me in her kitchen. I still remember every word. Adam deserves children. I stared at her. So do I. Her smile never moved. Then she said it. The sentence that ended everything. Maybe that's not possible for you. Barren? She never used the word directly. She didn't need to. The message was clear. And eventually it spread. Through relatives, church friends, neighbors, whispers, assumptions, judgments, all built around a story that wasn't true. The worst part? Adam never stopped it. A year later, we divorced. No screaming, no dramatic betrayal, just exhaustion, the kind that comes from fighting alone for too long. 3 weeks after the divorce became final, I found out I was pregnant. I sat on my bathroom floor, holding the test, completely stunned. I laughed, then cried, then laughed again. Because life has a strange sense of humor. For years, I couldn't conceive. Then suddenly, after everything ended, there it was, a baby. Our baby. I thought about calling Adam, more than once, but every time I picked up my phone, I remembered something. He didn't believe in us when it mattered, so I stayed silent. Not out of revenge, out of survival. Pregnancy wasn't easy, morning sickness, back pain, fear, questions. But every ultrasound reminded me why I kept going. Noah became my focus, my future, my reasons. And when he was finally born, everything changed. Every lonely night became worth it. Every tear, every disappointment, every scar. Then came that rainy Saturday outside the coffee shop. The first time Adam saw him. The first time everything finally caught up with reality. He stared at Noah, then looked at me, then back at Noah again. Rachel! His voice cracked. I stayed quiet. What is his name? Noah. Adam swallowed hard. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. Even strangers noticed it. There was nowhere left for denial to hide. His eyes filled with emotion. Not anger, not confusion. Regret. Pure regret. Then he asked the question. The question that had been living in his eyes since the second he saw us. Is he mine? I looked down at my son, then back at the man who should have been there from the beginning. Yes. One word. That was all it took. Adam physically staggered backward. Like the truth had weight. Maybe it did. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then another voice interrupted. Oh my goodness. I knew that voice, Linda. Of course. She stepped out of the coffee shop, carrying a purse and a look of absolute disbelief. Her eyes landed on Noah, then widened. Because even she couldn't deny what she saw. Noah had Adam's entire face. The resemblance was almost unfair. Linda looked at me, then at Adam, then at Noah again. For once in her life, she seemed speechless. Adam turned toward her slowly. Something in his expression made me nervous. Not anger, disappointment. The deeper kind, the dangerous kind. Mom. She immediately started talking, trying to explain, trying to justify, trying to rewrite history. Adam didn't let her. For the first time in years, he interrupted. No. The word landed hard. Linda stopped speaking. You called her barren. Silence. You blamed her. More silence. You made me believe she was the problem. Linda looked away. That was answer enough. Adam understood. So did I. The truth had finally arrived. Years late, but it arrived. Today Noah is 3 years old. Happy, healthy, growing faster than I can keep up with. Adam is part of his life now. A good father. A consistent one, but we're not together. Some bridges can be repaired. Others can only be remembered. People think revenge is loud. They imagine arguments, humiliation, public scenes. But the strongest revenge I ever experienced was much quieter. It looked like a little boy with his father's eyes, standing in the rain, while every lie finally fell apart on its own. And sometimes, that's more powerful than anything you could ever say. Sometimes the truth takes years to reveal itself. Sometimes, the people who hurt us the most eventually have to face the consequences of their own choices. Rachel didn't get revenge through anger or arguments. She got something far more valuable. Peace. And in the end, the truth spoke louder than any lie ever could. What would you have done if you were in Rachel's position? Would you have given Adam another chance? Or would you have walked away forever? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, Isis. And if you enjoy emotional stories about betrayal, shocking secrets, family drama, and powerful moments of justice, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the Truth Stories channel for more unforgettable stories. Until next time, remember, the truth always finds its way to the surface.